Chapter 16 Ambassadors of Light. The hangar bay doors opened in sequence, revealing the sleek lunar transport awaiting them, long and streamlined with wide, reinforced landing struts and a dull white hull reflecting the filtered lights of the hangar. It bore no aggressive markings, only the Syndicate seal and the American and Syndicate flags painted side by side near the nose. Ezra stood alongside his lifelong friends, Jonah, Rachel, Micah, Naomi, and Eve. They had grown together, swarmed together, and now, decades later, were being sent together. This wasn't just a routine mission, it was a statement. Ambassadors of Light, Shay had said when they were selected. Has a nice ring to it. Now, that title stuck. AOL, the informal nickname everyone used. The 6 of them wore simple clothes, comfortable but dignified. They were representatives of the Syndicate and its values, not diplomats with polished press kits, but stewards of the gospel and seasoned leaders in their own right. As they moved toward the boarding ramp, the doors of the shuttle slid open and revealed 6 younger adults already aboard, 3 men and 3 women, all between 18 and 25. It wasn't a surprise. Tradition dictated that any major ambassadorial voyage included an apprenticeship group. Their presence was expected. Ezra smiled as he recognized one of the young men, the same boy they'd spoken with in the warehouse with Shay and Charles. The others stood at attention respectfully. They were clearly briefed. Rachel stepped forward with a warm tone. Ladies, your cabins are along our corridor, between ours. That side's quieter. Naomi added, and the fellas, you'll be on the other side, across the main area. Plenty of space. You'll have your own pods. Yes, ma'am, said one of the younger men. We've already stored our things and gone through check-in. The layout of the ship was familiar now. A central common area with 20 personal cabins, 10 to a side. Handrails were tucked neatly into the ceiling and floor for zero-gravity situations, but the artificial lunar gravity was gently pressing their feet down now. Along the walls, fruit-bearing plants grew in thin vertical gardens. Strawberries, tomatoes, even herbs like mint and basil. The group settled in. The apprentices wandered toward the windows, taking in the curved arc of the lunar surface outside the hangar. In the distance, the faint glow of the sun glittered off the filtered dome of the Raoul County District Park. Eve walked alongside Ezra as they approached the dining area. Think they know what they're walking into? Ezra chuckled. I doubt it, but I didn't either back then. The ship began to hum as its systems powered up. Shay had personally prepped it. Hopper-class craft, Model L, the kind built for long-range travel across the moon's surface. It had enough storage and provisions for 20 passengers to live in comfort for 2 years. Solar collectors would keep power flowing nearly endlessly, and the interior was as close to home as space could get. Micah leaned against a bulkhead near the bridge entrance. Hey, Ezra, you realize what this means, right? Ezra turned. We're really doing it again. Micah nodded. Swarming, just like Nana said. Only this time, into enemy territory. Ezra's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked toward the sealed ramp that would soon open to the stars. Then let's show them what light looks like. The soft hum of the olive lamp echoed through its halls like a heartbeat. Gentle vibration underfoot, steady artificial gravity, and the light scent of citrus from the fruiting plants woven into the walls created a sense of peace that felt more terrestrial than extraterrestrial. The 12 passengers, 6 seasoned ambassadors of light, and 6 young apprentices settled into their new home for the journey ahead. The ship was generous, built for 20 with long-term missions in mind, and it bore the warm design touches the Syndicate had become known for. Fruit and vines trained along walls, polished wooden accents, and inviting light everywhere except the sleeping pods, where cozy dimness helped one forget they were floating between worlds. Micah leaned over the railing of the mezzanine outside the common room, watching the younger passengers as they poked around their new living quarters. I remember when we didn't even have hallways, he said with a chuckle. The first colony modules were just welded cargo cans with oxygen scrubbers. Rachel joined him. Those first AVA suits? It felt like stuffing yourself into a biscuit tin. I still remember when Jonah got stuck trying to fix a panel outside, feet waving in the vacuum. From the couches below, Jonah called out, "Hey! I got that panel fixed. Thank you very much." The younger travelers, 3 young women and 3 men, grinned at the playful teasing. The tall young man from the warehouse, whose name was Elijah Jr., no relation to Ezra's family, laughed. "Wait, y'all really had to go outside in suits? For real?" "Oh, we lived in those suits," Eve said, coming around the table with a tray of steaming teacups. "We had to manually check every seal and airlock back then. We wore those suits more than our clothes some days. I once spent 13 hours outside patching a solar junction during a lunar dust storm." Naomi nodded. "They didn't send us here with ready-made comfort. We built all this with sweat and scripture." Micah smiles. "I must confess, I was so tired there were times I just got out of the suit, went to bed, and got back in it for days at a time." He laughed as everyone was disgusted. "What? It was only me that could ever smell it. I was blind to it. Plus I had one of those suit scent packs. Bacon most of the time." Ezra laughed. "I have to admit one thing. I love dried apricots. There were times I would get my hands on one of the giant bags of dried fruits, and it would be the apricots. I could feast on those for ages. Would carry them in my gear everywhere I went." The adults who had all heard this were laughing at this point. The NCO and one of the junior enlisted were there eating at the table, laughing up a storm. Elijah Jr. asked, "What was so bad about the apricots? Did you have to go a lot?" Grinning ear to ear, Ezra said mischievously, "Well, the apricots gave me really bad gas. In my suit, it was terrible. But eventually, all that time out there, I wouldn't notice it, so it didn't bother me. Only thing was, one day I came back in from helping build a new module outside, and got in the cart with 7 other guys. We all got out of our suits and headed back inside. I started letting them rip. That gas was stuck in the cart with us the entire time. Nothing anyone could do about it, being on the surface. One guy got suited back up the entire ride back." At this point, it was difficult to understand Ezra, as he was laughing so hard about the story. Eve, laughing along, looks at the 6 young adults and said, smiling, "He dies laughing every time he tells this story. That gas is paint peeling, I assure you. I won't let him eat them anymore. It stays there in the house for days." Rachel smiled and handed Eliza Jr. a cup. "Never been in a suit before?" "Never even seen one up close," he admitted. "I was born under glass, raised inside tunnels. Closest I've come is the training sim when I was 12. Ezra, who had remained quiet at the far end of the table, sipped from his cup and then set it down with a soft clink. "We can fix that." Eve leaned back, amused. "What were you thinking?" "Tomorrow's schedule is open. Let's take them into the suit locker. Run a few drills. Let them feel it. There's no substitute for the weight of that helmet on your shoulders." Jonah added, "We've got enough spares and plenty of battery backups. If we're going to train ambassadors, they might as well walk like we did." The young ones exchanged excited looks. In the meantime, the crew gathered around the central table for their evening meal. Flaky flatbread with hot stew from a pressure cooker, a cold salad of hydroponic greens, and a dessert made from preserved strawberries and a cinnamon oat crumble. Rachel leaned back after the meal. "Do you remember when strawberries were a once-a-year treat?" Micah laughed. "Now there's a surplus. Shay told me they're making strawberry jerky." Elijah wrinkled his nose. "That sounds awful." "Don't knock it till you try it," said Jonah. "That stuff kept us alive in the 3rd winter." Rachel reached over and squeezed his hand. "Not just alive. Hopeful." The laughter and memory sharing drifted well into the artificial night cycle. Lights dimmed automatically as the ship's circadian program adjusted. The younger apprentices filtered off to their quarters, full of stories they'd been thinking about long after sleep took them. Ezra stood by the viewport alone for a moment before bed. The earth was a shrinking marvel in the dark. The moon, their destination, no longer held mystery for him, but it still held meaning. He whispered under his breath, "Thank you, Lord, for letting us see this." Behind him, the vines along the walls glowed faintly in night mode, and the ship gently sailed onward through the stars. The olive lamp whispered through the black, its hull glowing softly under the light of a distant sun. It was a marvel, a seamless blend of design, theology, and technical wonder. The vessel felt alive in a quiet way, not mechanical, not digital, just responsive. The 12 passengers had settled in, at least for now. The 6 ambassadors of light, Ezra, Eve, Rachel, Jonah, Micah, and Naomi, moved easily through the ship. This was not their first voyage, but for the 6 young apprentices, it was their first time off the lunar surface, and it showed. The ship's common space was at the heart of the vessel, surrounded by corridors branching like spokes to sleeping quarters, private study booths, and maintenance bays. The air was slightly humid thanks to the plant systems built directly into the ship's walls. Fruit-bearing vines, compact lemon trees, rows of herbs, even a wall of blue mushrooms that pulsed faintly in the evening mode lighting. There was no kitchen, not really. Instead, the olive lamp had an integrated sustenance module, a warm alcove with a waist-high cabinet, a small counter, and a softly pulsing arc interface set into the wall. Naomi had opened it earlier with a gentle hand gesture. "Arc, I need 3 evening meals. Low spice, low sugar, one with protein supplements." The cabinet clicked and 3 compartments opened. Inside were ceramic bowls, steam rising. Not synthetic food, real food. Nutrient perfect, hand-trimmed, lovingly plated, though no hand had prepared it. "I don't understand," Elijah Jr. had whispered, his eyes wide. "Where's the cook?" Rachel had smiled. "We had cooks in the early days. This ship doesn't need them. It's linked to the Ark's central culinary memory. Some say it learns what you need before you ask." Elijah Jr. tilted his head. "But doesn't anyone make food together?" Micah answered from the table where he was lacing up his boots. "Oh, we do. On the ground. We cook on the moon, in every home and gathering. But the ship is built for motion, not moments." "Still," Eve said, handing Elijah Jr. a bowl, "there's something holy about feeding others. When we're back on the surface, I'll show you how to make flatbread." They'd eaten in the glow of the ceiling light strips, adjusted to mimic the sun at golden hour, creating a warmth that touched skin and memory alike. The common table, a massive ring of polished walnut anchored into the floor, had recessed handholds at every seat, and footbars below in case of turbulence or gravity failure. The young passengers had chosen their quarters earlier. 10 sleeping pods flanked the common room, 5 on each side. The pods were modular. Some had connected theirs with a sibling or friend, creating little shared apartments. The 3 young women were nestled on one side of the ship near Eve and Rachel and Naomi. The 3 young men were on the other, near Jonah, Micah, and Ezra. The crew took the rest of the berths. The ship was quiet. Not empty, never empty, but it spoke softly. Lights responded to voice or gesture. Hatches whispered open and closed. Environmental controls adapted to mood and presence. In one hallway, Elijah Jr. had paused at a small, unmarked door. "What's this?" Ezra stood beside him. "That's the fold room. It's a prototype." "For what?" Ezra smiled. "We don't know yet." The room, when opened, revealed only a chair, a suspended cube of light, and a small tree grown out of the floor. No one used it. No one knew how. The Ark simply called it restoration space awaiting configuration. Elsewhere, the ship's chapel room held 12 seats in a circle around a glowing pillar. No sermon had ever been preached there, but everyone knew the door. The apprentices had peeked in, awed by its simple beauty. By the evening, the crew and apprentices had gathered in the common space again. The first day jitters were fading. "So," said one of the apprentices, the young woman with dark hair tied in a golden braid. What was the hardest part of the first colony? Easy, said Jonah. We're in a suit for 16 hours straight and try not to sweat too much. You sweat too much, and it freezes in the joints. Gross, she replied. Micah nodded. Your ears would itch, but you couldn't scratch. Drove me near mad once. Wait, what? Said another apprentice. You really wore them that long? We lived in them, said Eve. They weren't toys back then. They were the only thing between us and the grave. We were outside so often, some of us got paler from the suit lights than the moonlight. One of the younger men looked amazed. I've never even put one on. Ezra leaned forward. Good. Tomorrow, we change that. You're not just along for the ride. You're apprentices, and we don't raise soft shepherds. Rachel laughed. They're not soft, just untested. Eve reached out and tousled the hair of the nearest girl. Then we test them. That night, the older six lingered at the viewport. Earth was now only a pale half-moon behind them. Ahead, the arc of the moon glowed like silver breath in the void. Ezra looked out, his hands behind his back. We used to say that faith was the evidence of things unseen. But now we see things that were never meant to be seen, and we still believe. Micah placed a hand on his shoulder. The heavens declare the glory of God. Jonah added, and the firmament shows his handiwork. They stood together, quiet in their shared awe, their reflections merging in the glass framed by stars. The ship did not sleep, but it entered its resting mode. Lights dimmed, vines curled, the ark quieted, and somewhere between heaven and earth, 12 souls sailed on in silence. A gentle vibration in the floor marked the quiet hum of the lunar transport vessel, its artificial gravity holding steady as soft lights brightened gradually. The second day aboard the ship began in the most ordinary of ways. Quiet footsteps in the hall, the hiss of pressurized doors, the rustle of fabric as passengers emerged into the common area. The 6 young adults, Elijah Jr., Ellen, Kira, Selah, Mateo, and Joseph, were the first to shuffle into the dining area, eyes still groggy. They murmured greetings to one another and found their seats around the long table. Soon after, the junior crewman appeared. Crewman Traeger, a wiry young man from the Cersei district, gave a sleepy grin and nodded at the apprentices. Morning, he said, rubbing his neck. He was followed by petty merchant Hendricks, taller and broader, with a quiet demeanor and short-cropped hair. They had shared one of the modular cabins, their bunks folded up neatly behind them. Chief Operator Dellon, the NCO of the crew, entered next with a cup of something thick and dark in his hand. His uniform was crisp, despite the relaxed pace. He gave everyone a nod as he took a seat at the table. Smells like cinnamon again, he said, voice gravelly. Ark knows what I like. Last came Second Lieutenant Alina Reyes, the vessel's pilot and mission commander. Her silver-threaded braids swung over one shoulder as she walked in. Her cabin was private and well-earned. She had served on 2 Mars transfer vessels before being assigned to the Syndicate's lunar diplomatic fleet. As they gathered at the table, the ark chimed gently in the kitchen. A series of cabinets opened one by one, presenting covered dishes on sleek trays, cinnamon flat cakes, eggs, stewed fruit, protein loaves, sweet tea, and strong coffee. Everyone took their portions. Once seated, Ezra glanced around the table. Would someone lead grace? Rachel offered, bowing her head. Father in heaven, thank you for this ship, for these people, and for this peace. Let our words and our journey be pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen, came the chorus. Forks and spoons clinked softly. After a few minutes of quiet eating, Jonah leaned back and asked, So, what's it like in the merchant fleet? The question turned every head toward the 4 crew members. Lieutenant Reyes smiled gently. Depends on when you joined. I started in the second wave, just after Eden Lift elevator opened. Back then, we were shuttling resources, not people. Supply trains, construction bots, prefab habitats. Dellon snorted. You got to pilot clean ships. My first assignment was crawling around in an ore hauler with rusted panels and a solar panel array that worked when it felt like it. The younger crewman chuckled. What made you enlist? Helen asked. Family legacy, Ray replied. My mother was one of the original technicians that helped install the elevator's guidance systems. I grew up in the capital district in Guatemala. Serving felt natural. Dylan nodded. Same. Grew up around loading docks. Figure I'd move freight anyway. At least this way I do it in space. Mateo looked to Hennix and Traeger. What about you? I joined because I wanted to get off Earth, Traeger said with his grin sheepish. I was living in Oklahoma, working hydroponics. Grew up same stories as all of you. Wanted to make a difference. Got picked up to come here after training in Boot down in Guatemala. They put me up here almost 2 years ago. I joined after my sister did, Hennix said. She's a comms officer on one of the long-range research vessels. Thought I'd follow her example. She is easily the most successful person I know. She has worked so hard, and all her life she has skyrocketed through the Syndicate. She has flown as high and burned as bright as you can. She captains the research vessel. It has the same engines this ship does, except they get to use them. We have them on the ship, but we aren't ever going to turn them on. The engine we use this journey are to travel the moon. We won't even break the sound barrier. It's why it takes so long. So yeah, if you want to know what inspires me, if I'm not going to give the church answer, it would be my sister. She has done so much for the Syndicate and God's glory. She's going to make a big difference out there. Sure, this mission is important, and I'm not dusting your shine. But I just hope one day I'm half as bright as my sister. Even a dim star is going to shine forever, right? Everyone was silent for a moment. What's the fleet like now? Eve asked. Compared to when we started this. Dylan leaned back, crossed arms. It's grown. A lot. Used to be every lunar pilot and engineer knew each other. Now there are full academies, officer pipelines, maintenance crews, automated supply stations. This ship's newer, but we've seen what's coming. Traeger gestured at the walls. And the Ark? You can't tell, but it's running everything. Gravity modulation, air scrubbers, inventory management, you name it. Scylla looked around, wide-eyed. I've never heard it speak. Exactly, Ray said. It's silent unless you need it. But if you need something, medicine, tools, food, it's already preparing it. I heard some districts are making military ships, Joseph said, voice hushed. Rays glanced at Ezra. They are, Ezra confirmed. But officially they're defense support vessels, to protect the elevator, the stations, and the lunar colony. The shipyards at the station are primarily cranking out transport vessels, and some of them are massive. They will be able to carry so many people to Mars if we can get there fast enough. Alina, you say the ship could get to Mars in 2 weeks? That's right. Lieutenant Reyes was clearly not accustomed to being called by her first name, but moved on considering the source. If we were in a larger craft, they could support a bigger reactor, or even a chain of them. Plenty of folks are working on the theory, but with a large military build, we could push the envelope. Maybe get it down to 10 days, if we ran hot the whole way. Many of the adults in the room looked impressed, while the young crew were stunned. That speed sounded astonishing, and it was rolling out now to the public for use. Kira spoke to the crew. Are there large military craft being built by the Syndicate right now? C.O. Dellon piped up. The only one I have heard of is just going to be an example. Top of the line, cutting edge stuff. They don't want to launch warships to launch warships. The Americans have whatever they have. Everyone nodded in agreement and agreed with the sentiment. Hennix had refilled his coffee and said, that ship is supposed to be incredible. Top secret stuff. I've never seen or heard half of what's on it. No one has. They keep the technicians housed in their own village. Makes the Manhattan Project look soft. They're all out there in their own bubble and have their own massive hangar. I have cousins, like we all do, that go down there to make deliveries. But people that go in don't come back out. Elijah Jr. asked, does the Syndicate have plans for military expansion? Oh no, Dylan replied. No, nothing like that. Don't worry. Biblical wisdom has told us enough times we don't need a strong military. We do have the U.S. for one thing, but the Lord will watch over us both. No, the idea comes from Gideon. Everyone gets trained up as warriors. The folks who are scared get whittled out, and only the best of the best is what's left after trial by water. Selah chimes in, much to the shock of everyone. That's right. We do all learn how to use weapons, and have to check them out to train periodically. But we can't go get them unless we have a reason. The room went quiet for a beat. The low hum of the reactor through the walls, the quiet clink of mugs on the table. Suddenly, it all felt a little heavier. Jonah shifted in his seat. Are any of you from Earth? Like, you actually lived there before coming to the moon? Ezra glanced around at the others. One by one, they nodded. We are, Ezra said simply. Eve, Micah, Rachel, Jonah, Naomi, Dylan. Most of us were just kids back then, still figuring out who we were. Dylan was the exception. He'd already served. Dylan smirked into his cup. Air Force, logistics and convoy defense. Felt like babysitting sometimes, until the day it didn't. Micah leaned back. I was in school when the news came. The idea of leaving Earth sounded like something from a holodrama. My parents thought it was impossible, until the day the tickets arrived. Eve smiled faintly. I remember standing in the backyard at night, looking up at the stars. The elevator was already lit up like a silver thread in the sky. I didn't really understand what it meant, just that it was going to change everything. Rachel rested her chin on her hand. We were so young, packing up our rooms, saying goodbye to our friends we thought we'd never see again. The launch felt like the biggest adventure in history. Joseph's brows furrowed. So you're saying you all came up here as kids? Ezra nodded. Yeah, we grew up with the colony, just like it grew up around us. That's why talk of these new ships doesn't sit easy. We've seen how fast things can change once people start chasing the next horizon. He set his cup down. Peace is a garden. If no one tends it, weeds grow. Exactly, Dylan responded with a grin. Everyone in the Syndicate knows how to fight because they all learn. How many want to fight? Jonah says, let them work on their super sleek military ships as long as they want. We don't need it. The elevator is completely protected by the U.S., and that's the most important thing. Most things would happen near it or the lunar surface. Anything in space is going to be hard to manage for anyone other than the Syndicate, the U.S., or I guess now the Red Pact. Micah raised his mug. Well, I'm grateful. It's good to see the fleet in good hands. Dylan grinned. Don't say that yet. We haven't even shown you the tour. Can we see the engine room? Elijah Jr. asked excitedly. Tomorrow, Hinnick said. Let you digest first. They all laughed. The day stretched ahead, a quiet journey through the stars and silence, among believers and builders toward an uncertain horizon. The table in the center of the common area buzzed softly as the magnetic tiles locked into place. A few had flipped upright already, symbols glowing faintly blue or red under the dimmed lighting. Naomi leaned forward, eyes narrowed with mock suspicion. I'm telling you right now, Eve is definitely the cyborg, she said, pointing dramatically across the table. Eve raised an eyebrow, utterly calm. Because I fixed the hot tea dispenser this morning? Exactly. Naomi grinned. No normal human can fix a dispenser that quickly without using servo-enhanced wrist joints. I am a nurse, Naomi. I have soft skills, Eve replied, sipping calmly from her cup. You, on the other hand, have accused me of being a toaster bot 4 times tonight. That's because it keeps being true, Micah muttered, stacking his tiles and staring at the ceiling. I still remember when we played this in the Roll District Rec Center. You betrayed me in front of our own children. Rachel leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, smirking. You had it coming. You always pretend to be confused. Then at the last second, you hit us with that, I'm an automaton, but I was protecting the humans twist. That was a legal move at the time, Micah protested, to scattered laughter. Ezra shook his head slowly, shuffling the remaining tiles. It's wild that this thing started as a training exercise in ethical deception and subterfuge, and now it's a family game. It's a terrible family game, said Jonah. Every time I play, I start doubting my actual family. Dellen, hunched in the corner with a thermos of something thick and beige, chuckled deeply. First time I played this with the Moonfleet Logistics team, they thought I was an automaton just because I used the same coffee mug for 3 years. You still use the same mug, Reyes pointed out, twirling a tile between her fingers. You got that thing when the moon was a skeleton. It's seasoned, Dellen muttered. At the far end of the table, one of the younger apprentices, Elijah Jr., leaned into the conversation, clearly energized by being included. So, how long did it take y'all to learn to win this game consistently? A long pause. Still haven't, Eve admitted with a sigh. We just lie better than we used to. That's the problem, Jonah said. Once you start pretending, you realize how easy it is. That's why we never let the kids play more than once a month. I remember when we used this game to help screen people for courtship, Rachel added with a twinkle in her eye. If someone lied too well, we asked them to pray about their readiness. Everyone groaned at once. Ezra smiled into his hand. Some of us didn't get past that round for years. The arc chimed softly, just a gentle note reminding the group it was nearing lights out in 1 hour. The cabin lights slowly shifted warmer, dimming to a soft glow. From one of the younger crew members, a voice piped up with curiosity. So, this game was invented by the Syndicate? No, said Reyes. It started on Earth, but we adopted it and adapted it. Yeah, said Dellen. Humans trying to spot the fake among them? Nothing more human than that. They all fell into quiet for a moment. Micah leaned back in his chair, stretching. I think it's why we love it. On Earth, you needed that kind of caution. On the moon, we've worked so hard to trust each other, and now here we are, still playing the game. Ezra nodded. It reminds us what's at stake when the deception isn't a game. A silence settled in, not somber, but thoughtful. And Eve clapped her hands. All right, round 2, let's go. The tiles buzzed to life again, and they played, laughing, teasing, raising eyebrows, and guessing identities in a world where no one truly wanted to be right, because in their world, everyone longed to be fully human and fully known. The soft hum of the ship's engines faded as the ambassadors of light gently touched down on the landing pad in the Syndicate capital. Outside the main viewport, the domed skylines of the capital spread out in tiers, like layers of a great subterranean hive. Transparent panels above revealed a wash of filtered sunlight from lunar mirrors and the distant glimmer of Earth. This was still home, though just barely. Beyond this stop, the world would begin to feel foreign. The crew disembarked in 2 groups, weaving through the open corridors that led to the marketplace. The capital's market was alive with motion, sound, and color. Vendors in brightly patterned clothing waved and called to passers-by from stalls packed with handmade carts, specialty garments, and an endless supply of preserved goods in compact travel packaging. Cloth banners fluttered gently in the artificial breeze, and fruit trees lined the walkways in neat rows. Ezra was the first to stop at a table with hand-carved wooden figurines. Oh, this trinket is lovely, he said, holding a small dove shaped from olive wood. We must have 20 like it. He turned to the vendor with a kind smile. They'll make fine gifts for the Americans. Rachel moved briskly to a clothing stand. She thrummed through bolts of fabric and paused at a series of flowing dresses made in the Shepherd district. These are perfect, she told us other. Where are 40 more just like them? The apprentices hung back, wide-eyed. Wait, said Joseph, brow furrowed. We're just buying up everything? Naomi grinned. We're showering them. That's what you do when you want to make someone feel loved. You bring them gifts. She picked up a delicate tea set, glazed in emerald tones. Every item we take is a blessing, an encouragement. The point isn't to trade, it's to give. But, Joseph hesitated, if I did this next week on my day off and tried to take it to Earth to sell, the Ark would stop you, Naomi said. It would notify the vendor. The transaction would be blocked. You'd need a clearance for it. What we're doing today has been arranged. The Ark is already cleared for our mission. Kira's eyes sparkled. So we can buy anything? Anything you see that blesses someone else, Eve said. We're emissaries. Everything we bring with us is meant to glorify God and uplift others. Ellen dashed toward a stall selling tiny lunar spice kits. Oh, these would be so good for gift baskets. Eve nodded approvingly. Exactly. Think of others. Think of the impact. Find things that speak to hearts. As the apprentices dispersed through the market, the older crew lingered together, reminiscing. Do you remember when this market was just 2 rows of stalls and a tea cart? Naomi said, gesturing toward the bustling concourse. Ezra laughed. I remember when we hauled the lumber up here ourselves. The group gathered armfuls of items. Fine cloth, artisan tools, preserved fruit, lunar teas, jewelry, and music crystals, all logged automatically by the Ark, sorted and packed into the ship's hold before they even returned. We give because we've been given much, whispered Rachel, looking up toward Earth's pale blue curve in the sky. Eve placed a hand on her shoulder, and the Lord willing, what we bring will open the doors for the gospel. As the crew regrouped with their apprentices, arms full of gifts and hearts brimming with purpose, they stepped back onto the olive lamp. The cargo was secure. The mission was clear. Next stop, the heart of the American colony. Chapter 17. The City of Lights. The final morning aboard the hopper began in gentle quiet. After several days in shared quarters, meals, and prayer, the group had grown closer. Not just as mission partners, but as family. In the Syndicate, where everyone is kin by covenant, if not by blood, bonds form quickly. Talking to strangers felt less like diplomacy and more like finding distant cousins. Second Lieutenant Alina Reyes stepped up to the front of the passenger lounge, her voice calm and precise. We'll be arriving at the lunar state capital today at 1100 Standard. Please be ready for descent protocols by 10. If the port's efficient, we'll likely have you disembarked by 10:45. Coffee was passed around. The crew skipped breakfast to focus on pre-landing checklists, and the adults followed suit, gathering their things, checking their arcs, preparing their minds. Meanwhile, the younger ones lingered by the viewing ports, trading jokes and idle wonderings. Do you think the Americans eat real food up here? Probably vending machines and protein chips. Do they call themselves lunatics, or is that off limits now? They laughed, easy, unhurried, unaware of how deeply the coming sight would unsettle them. As the hopper entered final approach, the American Lunar Capital unveiled itself in full. The city was loud, vivid, and utterly overwhelming. Every dome and structure shimmered with color, bright lights and electric signage battling for attention in a lunar sky that had no business hosting such noise. Neon panels ran up the sides of buildings. Holograms danced like spirits over airless plazas. The same 12 corporate chains seemed to dominate the cityscape, no matter which district the eye wandered to. The American dream, it turned out, had been rebuilt on the moon, with more surface than the Syndicate would ever have considered reasonable. The land here was used to climb. Massive apartment domes spiraled upward, each level fitted with panoramic walkways and status-driven tiers. Every new dome seemed designed to outshine the last, some already halfway demolished as construction bots replaced them with even larger towers. It was not a finished place. It was a place obsessed with becoming. Naomi stared, eyes wide. They're tearing down domes to build taller ones? Jonah replied. Can't stand still. Gotta stay ahead. The hopper's scope caught movement above. Ezra tapped his arc and had it zoom in on the sky. A ship. No, several. Dominating the orbital view was the USSF Gulf of America, a cruiser-class behemoth suspended like judgment over the colony. The Guardian's logo gleamed beneath its name. Flanking it were 3 smaller vessels, 1 destroyer, 2 frigates, holding tight formation. Dellen's voice cracked from the rear chamber. Cruiser, that's a big one. Got a destroyer with her, and those are definitely frigates. That's a full peacetime escort, and that's just what they let us see. The arc interface widened, panning the surrounding space. The city's orbit was a mesh of satellites, smaller craft, and what were likely cloaked defense systems. Plenty more we can't see, I'd bet, Dylan muttered. Micah leaned back in his seat, exhaling. We've got watchtowers and backs. They've got a battle group. From behind, Mateo added, back home, our county doesn't even have an armory. Kira laughed softly. Yeah, we take the train to the next county over just to hit the range. No one replied. The hopper began its slow, deliberate descent. The crew remained aboard, but the ambassadors formed their procession. 3 young adults led the way down the wide ramp extending from the ship's belly. The elders followed in the center, flanked by the remaining 3 youth behind. Each of them carried a backpack, or bag, some slung over their shoulders, others hugged tightly to their chest. As they reached the hangar floor, cleaning bots and cargo droids swarmed. In seconds, every suitcase, duffel, and satchel was whisked away. Several Syndicate members protested, clutching their backpacks, but the bots only paused momentarily, scanning and gently extracting the bags with unsettling precision. Maybe the bots just store them for us, Naomi offered, though her voice wavered. Or maybe they just hold them while we're here, Micah added. I mean, surely they don't have crime problems up here, right? Everyone nodded, less convinced than before, but too polite to question the process. The spaceport was vast, like a shopping mall fused with a military base. Multiple levels towered above them, lined with glowing directories and pulsing ads. Shops, restaurants, casinos, clinics, spas, and entertainment centers. Sleeping pods stretched in every direction. Armed guards stood at every junction, wearing the unmistakable black and navy uniforms of the Space Force Guardians. Their belts carried a full array of weapons and non-lethal tools. Micah nudged the group and whispered, See the flashlights on their belts? The others glanced. He nodded grimly. Those aren't just lights. They strobe in a way that'll make you vomit uncontrollably. Doesn't count as force, since it doesn't really hurt. They flash you once, you puke. Do it again, you puke harder. They say it's for non-compliance. The group exchanged uncomfortable glances, adjusting the straps of their now absent bags as they were escorted out of the terminal. Just as they began scanning for customs checkpoints, they spotted something unexpected. A trio of officials standing beneath a floating hologram that projected the Syndicate's emblem and the phrase Ambassadors of Light in 6 languages. The group relaxed. The title had clearly stuck. They walked toward the officials with purpose. Pleasantries were exchanged, several photos were taken. The Syndicate members stood respectfully, some smiling, others blinking against the barrage of flashes. One of the officials, a towering woman in a pristine USSF uniform, stepped forward. Major Katrina Jackson, she said, extending her hand. I'll be your liaison with the United States Space Force. You can reach me anytime via your ARC. We will be escorting you around security as you have already been pre-cleared by our government for entry into the country. As a courtesy, you and your belongings will have a special clearance that will allow you through a special entrance later on where you can access your ship without going through the main entry. There will be no need to search any of your things. You and your staff have that ambassadorial privilege. Jackson's uniform was regulation perfect, but her hair was anything but. 2 massive braided buns framed either side of her head like satellite dishes, with her cap perched between them. Next came a wiry, overly eager woman from the Department of Lunar Diplomacy. She bounced on her heels and clapped softly. We are so thrilled to have you here. Really, it's just so exciting. Her voice grated with enthusiasm. Let's move along, shall we? We've got briefing times for tomorrow. But I understand you all have these arcs? Yes, wonderful. They'll notify you of when and where to be. We'll see you bright and early. And with a smile, She spun on her heel and hurried away. The final member of the welcoming party was a pleasant-faced young man who bowed slightly. I'm Elias. I'm here to assist with anything you need. Translation, local guidance, errands, whatever. Where are our bags? Rachel asked, glancing back toward the entry. Elias smiled. Already delivered to your staterooms. Just before the group began walking, Major Jackson gave one last nod. Don't worry about anything. The USSF Gulf of America is keeping those commies out of our skies. Ezra looked around once more before following. May we see clearly, speak truthfully, and walk with light, he whispered again, more to himself than anyone else. The journey was only beginning.